From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to SBI TV, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, we're going to explore how the trend in B2B towards enhanced customer experience requires a purposeful engagement strategy. I'm your host, Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. Joining me in the studio today is a longtime friend of mine, John deLorimier. John is the Executive Vice President and Chief Experience Officer for Concentra. Concentra is a national healthcare company. They focus on improving the health of America's workforce, one patient at a time. So through their affiliated clinicians, the company provides occupational medicine, urgent care, physical therapy, and wellness services for more than 520 medical centers in 44 states. So John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt.
Great to see you.
Good to be here.
So for those of you that are watching and listening out there and you don't want to miss a weekly show, especially with my buddy John, if you want to access our content library, download the SBI app via the Apple Store, search for Sales Benchmark Index, and you can use the notifications, take us with you on your commute, travel, and workout routine. So buyers have changed. They're more self-serve now than ever before. And everybody's watching this is nodding, going, yes, I got it. However, providers need to make available more useful information, more applicable info for specific customer scenarios at specific times that allow customers and prospects to take action. And self-education can be dangerous. And this is because users often overestimate how much they know and how much they understand the complexity of a market solution. So, John, that's kind of the setup. I'd love for you, before we jump into the segment, just to maybe talk a little bit about your background and what you do. You are incredibly qualified to talk about this emerging trend that I think we're still in the early days on. But first off, tell us a little bit about you and Concentra, and then we'll jump into the show.
Yes, thanks, Matt. Yeah. Thanks for being here. It's always a pleasure to see you and the team. So thanks for that. I'm the Executive Vice President of Concentra, as you said. Yeah. Growth and Customer Experience is my new title.
I like it.
Yes, and it took some time on that one. Yeah. And I think I'll just note this, is I used to be Chief Marketing and Sales Officer. Yeah. But I think from what we're about to talk about, it's important that I changed my title purposely. Yep. To start focusing on what I think is more important than anything else right now is customer experience. Yep. So to your question, Concentra, as you mentioned, we have 520 medical centers retail. We have another 130 on-site medical centers. We have 1,500 docs. We have 800 physical therapists across the country. And we provide certainly the largest occupational medicine provider in the country. We see 1 out of every 5 injuries in the United States. And we do a variety of other services. But for the most part, down to this, what we're talking about 160 field account executives, about 50 account management, and we can talk about that a little later, and that concept of account management, and then inside account managers and inside salespeople, right. Anything else that, and a digital platform as well. So I don't think that's news to anybody, yeah. But I manage that, and I'm constantly looking, as you know, of what we can do to change our channel strategy, yep. To make sure that we are adapting to the customer's needs. And then that leads me to the experience part.
Very good. So something that's interesting about John, and I've had the pleasure of watching John over the decade plus that we've known each other, is he's had the entire commercial function. And this gives him an advantage of sales, marketing, product, and now, as John says, experience. The symbolism of him changing his title signals to the marketplace, both internally and externally, the customer experience matters. This is early, and John's one of the earliest folks to do that. And we had an interesting debate last night about, should it be somebody who reports up into John? Should it be John? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So John, I guess as a way of getting started around experience, and what I think a lot of people are confusing is the role of automation and automated intelligence in facilitating a customer experience across a very non-linear element known as a buying journey and series of episodes. So maybe as a way of getting started, if you could maybe level set how you think about automated intelligence and its role in the customer experience, and we can work off of that.
Yeah, and you're right, there's some confusion about that. So there's two things that we're looking at as an organization. Certainly artificial intelligence or AI is one of the pieces that we look at. Also, what we're looking at is robotic process automation, or RPA, or bots. And what happens is people get confused when I start talking about this on how is that impacting the sales function. And I would tell them it's, for the most part, let's say the RPA is not, right? What we're trying to do is make a easy experience for the customer using robotics process automation, which is, for the most part, putting a bot into a place where a human might have been doing something that's a repetitive, which they might get wrong. And so from a bot standpoint, now the accuracy goes to 100%. The customer experience becomes much more favorable because they're getting the right information and the data they're getting is correct, versus potentially having some issues with using a repetitive motion that people do that get wrong. So that's one piece of it. So it's impacting the experience. It's not really impacting the sales aspect of it. So that's one piece. Artificial intelligence, people ask me, so how does sales or marketing can use artificial intelligence? Well, again, certainly artificial intelligence collects all kinds of disparate data. It makes sense of that data, and it can be certainly used in the sales, to where I want to go sell, who I want to sell to, why I want to sell to them, and what the value proposition is going to be. So all those things can be used from AI. But I would also say, more importantly than that, and this is, this is where I get some people who raise their eyebrows, is AI can be doing things to make the value proposition, enhance the brand promise through the brand experience better. And let me just say, from our standpoint, if you can, from a medical standpoint, if you can start using AI to do predictive analytics on outcomes, and if somebody comes to our physician and has this series of things, and they can then look at from an AI standpoint and all the data that we have from treating thousands and thousands and thousands of patients year over year, we can now do some AI and say this is the best course of action for you. And now that absolutely makes an unbelievable brand experience, but the brand promise that my salespeople can go out and say, this is how we do it,
can be supported.
Oh my God, it's a leap. It's a leap ahead, right? Now my value proposition's off the charts because they're using it that way.
So, John, one thing, and just to be clear on terminology, when John talks about sales channel, he isn't thinking about channel like I need channel partners that are going to go sell my products, because obviously he's not selling software or hardware. He's thinking about channels and routes to market relative to creating a frictionless experience. So, John, with that as the backdrop, knowing that if, as a patient, I go to one of the centers, I have a great experience, right? But it might be 5 years until I'm hurt again. However, I work in a big facility where accidents are happening and people probably need a Concentra. That experience needs to come back, and I'm being illustrative for the audience. Your thesis is, by using artificial intelligence, I can be much more predictive around an outcome, and then I can support a seller, inside or outside, with that evidence to then say to a potential customer, or a customer who's maybe spending a nickel, who could spend a dime, how they have a better experience.
That's exactly right.
So then connect that for me with the salesperson feeling, I guess, equipped or enabled, right? Sales enablement, big term, right? That you and I have always chuckled about. Connect that in terms of the seller, those 160 people in the field. Do they feel more equipped, more educated, or is it still too early to tell?
Well, if the brand experience is meeting the customer, so let me unpack a few things there. Is that so when a patient goes into our center, right? They're going in for 99% of the time in occupational medicine. So an employer, for the most part, depending on state regs, has sent them there, right? So we sell to the employer. Our net promoter score from a patient standpoint is really high, about 60%. From a patient standpoint. Our Google ratings are very high as well. So that experience that they're having in our center is really very positive. Our net promoter score from the employer standpoint is not so high. Let's call it average, right? And that's where the brand experience comes in, that the decision maker, right, is not experiencing the same thing as the employee/patient. And so that's where I want to focus on. Now, from a selling standpoint, how do I, as you said, sales enablement, right? How do I get those folks to sell that outcome, and then, which is a good thing, and then our approach is to make sure that they're trained, make sure that they have all these tools, right, to go out and do that, just like any other sales organization. Now, as you know, and I think you're leading me, and just waiting for me to go off, which is that I'm not a huge believer anymore in sales enablement. Right. I'm not sure, and I've been doing this a long time. Right.
I know.
And the idea that training people and expecting them to do what you want them to do. I'm becoming let's say I'm doubting
You're a skeptic.
I'm a skeptic now, and I've done all these things, right? I've trained people. We have a sales enablement platform. They can get the information they want. I'm just really frustrated with salespeople overall who don't use the tools that we give them, right?
So last question in this segment, and because something you said that's really compelling that we're going to unpack in the next segment is brand experience and brand promise. But last question, I guess, on AI as a threat to B2B selling, right? And as you think about that as we head into the next decade, right? Real, overhyped, about where it's supposed to be?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a true threat, right? I don't think AI is the threat. I think the B2B salesperson is their worst enemy, their own worst enemy, right? So I think AI can enhance any value proposition, and I think that we can make our organizations more efficient and effective for the employer customer. Now, if the salesperson doesn't embrace this and doesn't start to connect the right dots for the customer of what that means and how to do it, because we're going to talk about this potentially a little later, is the customer's getting more and more information not from the salesperson.
Correct.
Right? Correct. And if the salesperson can't go out and connect those dots for that customer, they're not very helpful, right? So then I lead to the article that you and I've talked about, which I think is big, and I'll just, Forrester's Death of the B2B Salesperson, which came out in about 2015, I think. I actually think is spot on. If those salespeople can't be value add in the moment, then I've been saying this for a long time. Hell, I can send a brochure, right? And that's going to drive that even more.
So. As John and I move from this first segment to this next segment, I'd probably wrap it like this. For probably 30 years, companies have been using some form of testing of personality profiles, from Caliper to DDI, to pick anyone that's out there. And John, it's interesting because even though everybody knows that that's an input to making a good hiring decision, over-indexing to those tests has never been a, quote, best practice. I look at AI and what they provide salespeople and sales organizations the same way. It's good data. It's helpful data. You get it faster, but you still have to package it up and create value for a customer. So as many of you are out there wrestling with, what does AI do for my team? How do I think about RPA? Should I have a bot? Should I not have a bot? You got to step back and ask, what's the activation mechanism of the data that allows your team to be faster, to have an insightful advantage, and bring more value to the customer? So, great show from John. So, John, appreciate seeing you, man. Always good to see you. And you always have great opinions, and you did not stop short on this one. So, as always, the team and I appreciate you tuning in, your eyes and ears, because you have a choice on where you spend them. Thank you for your continued support, and that's it for today. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.